So we pick up the story of the Magi, and they are on this epic journey. They followed the star. God has revealed himself through the star. The star leads them to Jerusalem, where they encounter the Bible, and then the Bible actually points them to the Messiah. And then the star has reappeared, and it's shining right over the spot where the Messiah is. And the Magi are there, and they go in and they see the baby Jesus in his mother's arms, and they fall on their faces and worship him. It's like all the expectations, all the excitement that's built, all of their hopes are finally completely fulfilled in this Messiah. And they open their treasure and give gifts to him. And then we're told that they're warned in a dream not to go home the way they came. They shouldn't go back to Herod. They should go home a new way. And when I think about my life, and when I think about the stories I know about your lives, I know that that's true for us so many times when we encounter Jesus. When I was 25 years old, I had an encounter with Jesus that changed my life and led me home in a different way. I was 25, I was on a caravan trip to upstate New York, Toronto, Niagara Falls, and I was a staff on the trip for high school students. It's a high adventure camping trip, and I had been asked by Dave Bartlett to give just a little bit of my faith story that night around the campfire. So I was sitting at a picnic table. I can remember it exactly. Linda Bartlett was sitting across from me, and Linda looked up and said, "So what are you going to talk about?" And I was just telling her about this excitement that I had about grace. Just when I realized that Jesus and the work that he did on the cross had completely taken away my sin, all of my sin, and it allowed me to return to a relationship with Jesus, just how much that meant to me, and how I didn't have to worry that my sin kept me from God, or I didn't have to completely deal with my sin over and over again, that Jesus had dealt with it. But then I began to tell her about how, while that was so wonderful, the grace that I had received for the forgiveness of my sins, what was so hard for me was the fact that I still carried so much guilt and shame around as a result of my sin. This one is you. In 1993, do you know when I was 18 years old, I had Nicholas.
Hi, my name is Nick Chestnut. I'm here with Chef Mickey, and I'm going to have a cookie with Chef Mickey.
I had just graduated from high school, and I didn't come from a family that had babies when they weren't married, and I didn't come from a group of friends that had babies when they weren't married, and it was a pretty big deal for me. And luckily I had received tons of grace and mercy and kindness from people around me, but I had considered myself a follower of God, and I knew God's rules, and I knew God's law, and I knew that my behavior wasn't pleasing to God, and I knew that it was sin, and I carried this guilt and shame that I still lived that way. And then when Nick was born, he was very sick. He was so sick that a couple hours after he was born, he had to be taken to Iowa City. He couldn't eat, and he couldn't breathe on his own, and he couldn't move, and I just started to have this belief that God was punishing me through Nicholas. And you know what you loved when you were that age? Dinosaurs. And as Nick got a little bit older, it was really clear that he wasn't developing the way that other kids do. And when he was 2 years old, we got a diagnosis of Prader-Willi syndrome. It's a genetic disorder, and it meant that Nick would be mentally retarded. He would never live independently. He probably wouldn't have a job in the community. And, to tie that reality for my child to my sin, and then to have God wrapped it up in that, was a really heavy burden to carry. Should we see what else is in here?
Yeah.
Do you remember when you used to love Mickey Mouse? And as I sat at that picnic table and unpacked that with Linda, her face, I'll never forget, her face was just, she was shocked. She couldn't believe that I could receive grace and forgiveness from Jesus, yet hold on to the shame and guilt, especially surrounding Nick and his disability. And she just began to talk to me and to share with me that when God sent his son, because he loves us, his intention was that we would receive that gift completely. That not only would we receive forgiveness for our sins, but we no longer bear the punishment for the sin either, and definitely an innocent little baby doesn't bear the punishment for that sin. And then we talked a little bit about that sin is really serious in the world, everywhere we look, in relationships and in creation and in nature and in the genetic code, that sin has altered the world in really serious ways. But that's because of all of our sin, not because of my individual sin. So when I think about the Magi, they encounter Jesus, they fall down and worship him, and they are sent in a new direction on the way home. And I had that exact same experience on that trip. I encountered Jesus in a new way. I was able to exchange the foundation I had, that I carried the shame and guilt. I had received this newfound freedom, that God had revealed himself in a new way to me through Jesus and said, you know what, it's all finished, it's all done, it's all taken care of. And now I was given this new foundation, a foundation that was rock solid in Jesus Christ. And what that allowed me to do is it gave me freedom and confidence to approach God, but it also gave me freedom to enjoy my son, to enjoy Nick Chestnut in all of his quirks and all of his hilarity and all of his ridiculousness, even though I know that huge storms are gonna come, even when I build my house on that rock. The wind is gonna blow, it's gonna shake that house, but I get to enjoy my kid, and I get to enjoy my adventure following Jesus.
Do you like the baby shoe?
So our hope for you this Christmas is that God will reveal himself to you through Jesus in a new way, and you will fall on your face and worship him. And then you will realize that the first response is to open the treasure that you have in your life, your time, your treasure, your resources, your talents, and give that gift back to God. And then listen, pay attention when he tells you that new way. Be changed in a way that allows you to maybe let go of something that you brought in with you, and you'll be able to go home by a new route in a new way. Merry Christmas.
Where's my picture?
Your picture's right here. That one's you.
That one's Ellie's?
Yep, that one's Ellie's.
Why do you keep these?
Because they're special.